Yo, what is going on, everybody? It is Brave Cats here once again with a little bit of a geophysical update. Now it's January 8th, 2026, and hope everybody had a pretty good New Year. Hopefully things went decent over the holidays. For me, I mean, yeah, it was in terms of family gathering and food and all that good stuff. Yeah, it was a good time. Now, unluckily, I did get pretty sick into the new year, and overall, I think things have been um, more than a little bit complex geopolitically, and sometimes that's no different when it comes to the cosmological scale, you know? So, anyways, let's just get into a little bit of earthquake action here, starting off. So, this is the last 7 days of earthquakes, and really right here is where everything starts off. So, these are some of the oldest earthquakes on this list currently. This happened down in Mexico, pretty much just about a week ago. And, well, this was pretty bad actually. You know what? I think there was potentially some earthquakes even earlier, but this is what we see on the swarm here. And I mean, this was like these sixes here. They were causing, buildings to shake, people to be evacuated, minor damage. Luckily, nothing major. If it was like a 7.5 instead, then yeah, it would have been way worse. But that was to kind of start things off this year. I think that was pretty much one of the first major earthquake related things. And, since then, things are, well, the entire Ring of Fire here is still completely active in every way. I mean, this is really going to be the main kind of focus, I think, on things for a while, as they have been. So again, we see a lot of deep earthquakes here happening, along with shallower, larger activity. And again, I'm using Dutchsinse's overlay because it seems like it's pretty dang good. So again, just pay attention to all these arrows, the D letter D's for deep earthquakes, as well as the X's here. These things, they seem to really just be spot on at this point. Over here, letter X, we see deep earthquakes, not deep earthquakes. We have regular, shallower earthquakes falling off into these X zones. So we got the Mid-Atlantic Ridge here. And yeah, we actually did start seeing much newer activity kind of started popping up in the Indian Ocean. So that's honestly pretty interesting. As far as amateur science and observation goes, with when I've been looking at this, these are all fives, right? We got a 5.9 here, southwest of Australia, and these 5.7, 5.4, and a 5. I mean, these are all similarly sized earthquakes. So we have a similar magnitude of pressure dropping off in the Indian Ocean. And there's just been pressure dropping off everywhere. So, coming out from these deep earthquakes and a lot of this shallower, larger activity, going out through the Indo-Australian plate. And things have taken a ramp back up into 5.0 activity. Quite a lot of that going on pretty much all throughout the Indo-Australian plate, even going out, into Asia, into the Middle East here. If we take a look at this, we've had a lot of increasing activity right here. I believe this is, the kind of Afghanistan, Middle East kind of area here. I won't be too specific, but we could, of course, even just pull some of these up here. So, like I said, Afghanistan. Um, and this is an interesting area because, well, there is a letter D right here for deep earthquakes. Because there is, some slightly deeper ones in the mix. And it's not the first time I've seen it like this where it almost seems like you'll find, if we just scroll this here, you've got a shallow 5, and then the next ones are deeper. And so you get a shallow one, and then you get some deeper ones. And yeah, so it's kind of weird, these are very reactive over here. You get a deep earthquake, you get a shallow one, vice versa. You get pressure going up through Japan here, and of course Kamchatka, because these volcanoes as well are still active. I think if we just go here, we can take a look at the Italy quakes and the volcanism. I guess, hold on, give me 1 second. I'm gonna go ahead and actually open the Smithsonian, because I haven't actually looked over here in a while. I haven't looked at this website since the government shutdown, because again, it became unreliable at that point. And, even now, it's like it only updates every week or two. So, but I mean, this is going to still look a lot different than the last time I looked at it here. So, interesting. I'm definitely going to be looking some of these up. And this is the year that, well, I really truly wake up to my actual self. And, there's going to be a lot more content in this kind of regard here. At this point, I'm just doing like truth science and pure magical awakening, because that's that's really what's happening in the world. Because, well, I mean, I'm gonna become a lot more awake on X at this point. There's several subjects I've been interested in a long time now, and they all seem to be coalescing into one thing, basically. Everything's connected, everything's related. Even, the extent of which things are happening geopolitically and stuff like that, there's too many coincidences at this point. We've got space weather up here. I'm actually just gonna kind of go through that really quick. We did have a couple of flares today. There was one far side blast, and then one earth facing. But the KP index has been chill. Everything's been mostly stable. We do have a coronal hole over there. It kind of looks like a shark fin. That's actually kind of funny. Look at that. Kind of looks literally like a shark fin. Yeah, with another of the same shape inside of that. I don't know. I'm becoming a huge nerd, okay? Don't mind me. So, if we take a look at this down here, again, I'm not a professional on this. I don't know particularly what, we're all looking at here. But this Earth is the blue circle. I'm not sure why it jumps around like that. This is just some sort of rough estimate of what is facing Earth in terms of the sunspots and the surface of the sun. So it looks like for a little bit there we were directly facing some of these sunspots. I think it was probably these ones right here in the middle. Those seem to be pretty locked on for a minute. We got some bigger sunspots kind of going across the limb there. And, that's just kind of what's happening. So I'm actually, since I'm working on like some sort of website, I've been trying to do, some deeper dive research on some of these things. So one thing I was researching today was piezoelectric crystals. specifically olivine, which is a mineral crystal that resides abundantly in the upper mantle and the crust of Earth. And those piezoelectric crystals actually are an attractor of solar energy. So, if we're talking about trying to correlate solar activity with earthquakes and seismology, and even volcanism for that matter, these piezoelectric crystals, which basically just means, they can be affected by electricity or even radiation. So, we have X rays from the sun, protons, all these other particles and things coming from the sun. And, it actually interacts with these, these piezoelectric minerals and crystals and things like that, iron, things that are influenced by either magnetism or electricity or both. And so, there's a lot of frontier science going on that mainstream doesn't want to admit, where, that's where a lot of these deep earthquakes and other influencers, basically these solar particles, are penetrating deep into the earth, into the crust, into the mantle. We're not talking about visible light at this point. This is like, the X-rays and all the deeper penetrating solar particles, which actually make up a lot more of the total emitted particles from the sun. The visible light is basically the tip of the iceberg for that. And, it influences every layer of the atmosphere. It can affect health and life. So, that's kind of the frontier science going on here is, the sun, well, it's basically doing all the hard work, as it always does, as it would if, it just makes sense, right? So, anyways, I've just been kind of hand collecting a little bit of basic earthquake data, and I'll be kind of putting this into some sort of table, just kind of comparing things at a basic level from what I can gather personally. So, it's just kind of me doing my part in having a different perspective, looking in on all of this stuff as it relates to pretty much every field, including archaeology. Okay, one of the main things that one of the main people that I try to support on X is Jimmy Corsetti and any other archaeologist, actually trying to expose the truth and trying to do things right. Because, when we're talking about, vast changes and, things happening quickly in a short time on Earth, that is, well, you got to look at ancient history, and that really says a lot. So, anyways, I know I'm jumping around at a lot of different things, but, well, there's a lot of pent-up things happening, so, anyways, I'm going to take a look at the tremors here, because I haven't looked at it. So, let's go to that, and we have tremor map pulled up here. So this is looking at, from the 1st to the 8th. So let's see here. Again, I'm still trying to get used to the way that this works because, well, it looks like to me the biggest major change that they did is it seems harder to actually see the total. So it looks like, we've had 395 in the past 8 days. Seems like honestly a rather low number. And, that's kind of one of the things I noticed looking at the West Coast here, especially, is that things did kind of actually slow down. Okay, well, we're looking at the tremors. But when it comes to general activity, it seems like we've had more pressure kind of resolving in the eastern and kind of middle of the United States. But then when it comes to the West Coast, I'm going to go back to this. Things have actually kind of taken a step down, have become a little bit of a quiet zone, especially considering these earthquakes in Mexico and everything that's happening up in Alaska. All right, now things have actually kind of become a little bit rather quiet. Besides, of course, this 4. Looks like that struck up here north, so definitely looks like north of the northwest of the San Francisco Bay has become a little bit more active. Was seeing tremor swarms. Now there's a 4.1. That's actually, well, it's relatively significant, I would say. Well, according to a lot of the people I've followed and some of the forecasting knowledge that I trust. Yeah, no, things are low-key very significant. So, again, kind of following the Ring of Fire here in South America, there's been, more deep earthquakes, more regular ones. We got 5.0 activity. But the most interesting development, I guess, right now is going to be what's happening at Campi Flegrei, Italy. So if we take a look here, there's actually like an actual swarm here now, with overall 4 quakes above magnitude 2, which, normally that's not a very significant thing. But we're talking about, this kind of middle Europe, mid-Europe region. We get a lot of activity in Turkey, and we get more activity that kind of tends to drop off down here, south, closer to Africa. But when it comes to middle of Europe, this, especially here in Campi Flegrei, is going to be a lot more adjacent and relevant to the volcanic activity. So, okay. Within the last 12 hours or so, there's been a bit of a swarm developing. I have not been looking at this for nearly long enough to really make any sort of professional or even educated guess. However, just simply being aware of it and looking at it is something that the vast majority of people are not even remotely interested in. So, anyways, I'm just going to kind of take a little bit of a closer look here at the sun. I'm just kind of out here, just kind of doing my thing. And there's going to be a lot more stuff I want to do this year. So, again, all this sort of stuff here has become extremely, not just fascinating to me, but vastly important. In fact, a lot of the craziness that you see happening in the world, politically or otherwise, and I would say for the last couple hundred years, easily, a lot of these major decisions that power makes in this world has to do with what's happening in terms of this stuff right here. What happens in the environment, what happens amongst the stars, all of that stuff. It all plays a part. So when we're talking about longer cycles, when we're talking about different aspects of the sun and the earth and the whole solar system, and even as it relates to ancient history, even religious or biblical things, I would say this is a extremely crucial time in history, for every reason imaginable. So, at this point, if you're not kind of into the, what's really going on in today's age, not even just as it happens with some of these scientific things, but if you're not truly seeking the truth in this day and age, then I don't know what you're doing. You're far behind and you're going to be left behind. And, that just happens. So, anyways, I don't really have a whole lot to cover other than this. I just wanted to get something out and do something that felt true, something from the heart, from the soul. This is going to be an interesting year, folks. I'll catch y'all later.